Today, I want to show you how you can access your users' native contacts that are on their phone inside of your Webflow web application using Wized and Despia. So you probably already know Wized. Wized lets you turn Webflow applications into web applications, and it adds an interactivity and reactivity layer for the web on top of Webflow. But there is another layer that we can add on top of Webflow, and that is Despia. It allows your Webflow/Wized application to not just be a mobile application that can be published to the App Store and Google Play Store, but it also allows your application to use simple JavaScript snippets to access native functionalities. And one of those features is native contact access. So today I want to show you how simple it is to set that up, and we're going to set up native contact access inside of our Webflow application with Wized and Despia. So let's get right started with that. So first of all, we want to pull up the documentation for Despia for native contacts, because this will show us the methods that we need to use to implement this. Also, you want to have an application that's already integrated with Wized, that's built in Webflow, that's already set up in Despia as a project and published to the store using our one-click store publishing. It can be as a draft, but you just need to make sure that you have it running on your phone using TestFlight. That's the only requirement for us to build this today. So let's close this. And now that I already have it pulled up on my phone as a real native application, which is pretty cool through TestFlight, we can now go back into the application and we can build this and nicely set this up. So let's actually close this app, and we're going to go back to TestFlight, and then we're going to open them once we have made the appropriate changes. So now I want to set this up. So first of all, we need to go to Webflow and build an interface, and we're just going to follow the core principles of the native contact access. So first of all, we need to get the user's permission to get access to the native contacts. Now, you probably want to do this in your onboarding flow when you ask the user, hey, do you want us to send push notifications? What's your email? Do you want us to access your native contacts, right? But because we're not going to build an onboarding flow today, I'm just going to add a button in here, and that'll do it for illustrational purposes. So oh my God, I probably want to center that. Oh, what did I do? Where did the button go? Oh my God, okay. Let's add a button. Okay, so, oh, there you go. Perfect. The button was over my camera widget, so how about we center it? There you go. Now I can see the button. Perfect. So let's call this button request contact access. And you probably want to put this on your onboarding screen, but today we're just going to follow the core principles. So once we now have the ability for our application to request contact access, we need to go to settings and add a Wized attribute to this so that Wized can recognize it, so we can run the Despia JavaScript SDK with that. So we add a custom attribute of Wized, W-I-Z-E-D, and we're going to do the value Despia request contact access. Despia request contact access. There you go. Now you can name this whatever you want, but I think it's pretty cool having lots of attributes saying Despia in your Webflow project. It's great advertisement for us as well. Look at that. So now if we go on the live site, we see there is the button, but it doesn't do anything. So we need to go back to Wized, refresh the canvas so that we're going to see this button populate. And now we can go on our elements panel and on X-ray mode, and we can click on this button and we can create a new action for that. So we're going to go to actions, the little power icon, and we're going to add a new event here. Now the event will be on click. This will be the event listener that we're registering on this element. And we're not doing prevent default because it's not in a form. And we're going to add an action, and the action will be a run function. And now we're going to open the function editor, and we're going to build a run function here. So now we're going to go to Despia's documentation, and we see we need to first request contact permission. So for that, we need to run window.despia and then request contact permission : one word in quotes. So Despia window.despia equals, and then in quotes, request contact permission, one word lowercase : Let's copy that and run that in our Wized run function. Fantastic. That's how simple it is. Now, window.despia will show as undefined in the editor, but that's completely fine because window.despia is something that the native Despia application will inject. So just ignore this message. This is how you will have to call that. So let's close that. Fantastic. Okay. So now we're running this. So now our application is actually requesting the contact permission. So now we can publish this and it should work on our application. So now I can open my phone again and open the application through TestFlight on my phone, and I should be able to click on here, and we're now requesting contact access. Now it's a pretty bad example because I already have requested contact access on this application, so I can already read the contact, so there's no pop-up saying, hey, are you sure you want to share your contact access? Because the app already has that cached. But this is what you want to do, and if you do not have that, it will show a pop-up saying, hey, please request contact access. But since this application for video purposes already has contact access permission, we can now just, again, close the application. It's pretty cool. We're having real-time updates. You just need to go back to Xcode, and you can test what you're building in Wized right inside of your native mobile application. And now we're going to add another button to actually read the data. So we're going to add another button inside of here that's going to be read contacts. Fantastic. And then I'm going to go on custom attributes and I'm going to do Wized. I'm going to do Despia read contacts. And you can run the read contacts not just on a button. You can run it on page load when an API is successful. You can do it whenever you really want to. But contacts, read contacts, there you go. And we now have that attribute going on. So we're going to publish on Webflow again, and then we will be able to read the contacts. Now another thing that we can do is we can now show this in like a little text area to see that we're actually loading the data. So let's just really quick go to, where did I put that? Text area. Fantastic. Let's put a text area, but it needs to be in a form. So let's just really quick, we can just do oh, not a text link. We can just do like some text in here. Text block. Fantastic. Let's just put a text block in here, and let's just give it a Wized attribute so we can see the contact data coming back. Let's just do an attribute on that of Wized, and then contact data sample. Okay, so now I have the button with the Wized attribute of Despia read contacts, which it can be anything. You just need the attribute to identify it in Wized. And then we have this text here, this text element with a Wized attribute as well, where we just put the sample data so we can see that it's already working and reading the native contact information through our Wized application. It's super simple, like it's really amazing. So let's go back to Wized, refresh the canvas, and you see we have now this Despia read contact. So I'm going to click on there. We're going to define an action for that element. We're going to add a new event listener. The event will be on click, like it was on the other one, right? Both are on click events. We're going to do on click on that button, but you could do it on API finish, on page load, on whatever you want to do when custom code runs. No prevent default, but we're going to add an action here of a run function, and then we're going to run the function. Now the function will be the request for reading the context. So we're going to copy that, and then inside of here, back at Wized, we're going to put this request, which will window.despia will read the context. That will be the first run function to invoke the ability for Despia to now read the contacts. That's the first that we need to do. Now we need to put the context somewhere. So we need to go to our variable tab in Wized, and we will need to create a new variable. And I'm going to call this contacts. The initial value will be an empty array if we want to, right? We can just put an empty array, or we can leave it empty. we don't need to do persistent storage unless you want to. So now we have a context variable. Now I'm going back on the button with this action and event running. And then we have this run function window.despia, and this will be window.despia equals read context : // In the Despia documentation, you see that's the second step to invoke the ability for Despia to read the context after having the permission, which you can do in onboarding. Now, if you're unsure if the user has granted the permission, you can just read the contacts, and if it comes back as nothing, that just means that it does not have the permission, and then you can prompt the user to go to their settings and enable that permission. So let's go back here. We're now invoking window.despia equals read contacts : / all one word and lowercase in quotes. There you go. So now that we have this, we now need to be able to get the contacts after we're invoking the ability to read them. So as you can see here, we have this handle contact data function, which we can run, which also works for Wized. So let's copy this from our documentation at docs.despia.com, and now we're going to add another action. This will be another run function, and we're going to go to the function and we're going to paste this inside of here. Now it's going to be a big function, but it is something that we will need to remove lots of code. So let's remove this Nordcraft sample code here. Let's remove the Wized request. I only want the contact information. Let's remove the WeWeb sample. We don't need that. We're not using WeWeb, right? So let's remove that. Let's remove the console log. We don't need the console log. The only thing we need is this little helper function here, observe Despia variable, which will allow us to observe the native variables. That's it. And then you have this if a timeout is there, meaning there is no contact data being coming back. Right now we're just doing a console log saying, hey, we couldn't get the variable. But you could use this to update the variable saying, hey, the user has no contact permission. Let's show a pop-up telling them how to go into the settings and enable this permission because they failed to give permission the first time. So you can build a fallback. We're not going to build that today, but we give you all the flexibility here with this code to do really amazing stuff. So now we're using this observe Despia variable function. We're observing the context variable, and then we have this function, meaning once it comes back, we're now setting the Wized variable. So I'm going to do set Wized variable with native contact data. Okay, fantastic. And now our Wized variable is not contacts data, it's v dot contacts, and then we'll have this equal contacts, which is the native Despia variable that will be injected into the mobile application, so we can set it in the Wized application. So now we need to run this function. We can close that. It's pretty simple. Okay, and now I'm just going to go to this text here, and I'm going to go to this plain text, yeah? And on text, I'm going to go on value, and this value will be contacts. And we'll see now we're rendering like a little sample preview of the data in this text element. So let's publish this. And then once it's published, we can go back to TestFlight. We can open the application and test it on our real phone, right? I'm doing phone mirroring. This is right now running on my real iPhone, which is pretty awesome because you can just do those changes in Wized. You can just open your phone, open the application in TestFlight, and you can test it right away. So let's take a look at that. Let's read the contacts, and as you can see, the contact data is being read. You see, now what I did is I only gave access to one contact, which is Apple, which is on my phone as a contact, because the user can choose if they want to give your application access to their whole contact book, or if they want to give you access to only specific people. Maybe they get the president in their contacts and they don't want that number to be leaked. They can exclude that, right? Despia gives your users the ability in terms of privacy policies and privacy measurements that we're taking and allowing your application to implement out of the box. So they can choose to only share specific contacts with your application, but they can adjust that anytime in the settings of your application that your application will have, because it is a real native mobile application. It's your Wized application compiled as a real native mobile application of over 2,100 native files. So there you go. We're reading the native contact data. We can now use this data to render a list. If we want to render this data as a list, we can go to our documentation actually, We're still working on the Wized documentation, but let's duplicate this, because we're going to have like specific documentation of all the videos that we're doing here for Wized available. But if I just go on the WeWeb part that we have, WeWeb, because Wized and WeWeb are very common in how they handle JSON rendering. You need an array to render stuff in Wized. So if I go here on our contacts documentation for WeWeb, we have a little function that will help you, and I will share a link to a Wized documentation page. But if you go on weweb.despia.com and you go on native context and you go to 4.1 to that step, you will see that there is this const result equals object.entries input map name numbers, and then it gives you the first number of the contact and maps it and returns it as a result. We want to use this to get the Despia variable as a JSON array so we can render it as a list in Wized. So let's copy that part. We don't need the first part, that's only for WeWeb, but let's copy that and let's go back to Wized. And now what we want to do is, when we get this signal here, this event, this action to read the Despia contacts, right? And we're setting it in the variable. We want to format this, because we're just getting it as an object, to make it work with the way Wized needs it to have to render them as a JSON list. So I'm going to paste this piece of code. Oh, yeah, there you go. Oh, no, how do I format this again in here? Okay, I'm just going to manually do that then. Pretty enough. Let's do that here. Let's put that in here. Okay, we don't need the return, but we need to keep in mind that we're defining the result here. So what we need to do, we need to get contacts, right? So we're doing here object entries input name number, right? So we're doing that here. Now input is missing, so let's take a look at that part of the documentation. We're defining input here as the event coming from a context workflow, which does not exist in Wized. So input in here will be contacts. So I could just do a const called input that will equal contacts, because Despia is looking for the context variable, right? Contacts, and I'm just defining input as contacts, and then I'm just using this piece of code to get this const input, which will be set based on the contacts into this code. I could also make it way simpler for myself and just put contacts right in here where I'm doing the mapping formula and cut out one line of code. Perfect. Okay, so now we have result. We're defining that here. The formatting is fine. Okay, and let's copy this const result, and I'm going to set v.context, not with contacts. v.context equals context will be replaced by v.context equals result. So we're putting it into a format that Wized prefers, which is a JSON array instead of an object for rendering lists. So with that being said, I can now publish the application, and I can open my iPhone again, and I can close the application, open TestFlight again, open the application through TestFlight, click on here, and now as you can see, I'm getting an array. Now that array now allows me to render a list. So for that, I can go now with Wized and proceed with the normal ways of rendering a list, which we could do real quick. I would just go inside of here, and I would just add a div, and in that div, I'm going to add another div, and that div is going to be styled a little bit, but we can skip the styling. I just want to focus on the functionality here. So let's do like a text block and another text block. So I'm going to put two text blocks in here, and this will be on this div that is in the div, that would be the list item. I'm going to add a custom Wized attribute of Wized, W-I-Z-E-D, of list item. Let's just do contact list item. Okay, and then on this text in the contact list item, I'm going to add a custom attribute as well of Wized contact list item name, contact list item name, and then I'm going to do another custom Wized attribute on the other text block in it of Wized contact list item number, contact list item number. And I'm going to publish this now in Webflow, and then we can go back to Wized and we can render this as a sample list if we want to. So let's go back to Wized, and now let's reload. Okay, and now we can go to the X-ray mode and we can go on, the list, which is a little bit hard for us to get because so many elements are over it. So let's go directly to the elements panel, and let's see, and we have this list item here, right? So we now need to create an index variable to repeat the list. So I'm going to create a new index variable called iterator. So let's just call this I, and then the initial value will be 0, right? So we can repeat over the list because lists start in computer language with 0. That's how you start counting: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It doesn't need to be computed. So we now have vi as our iterator variable. And then we will go to the list value, and the list value will be v.contacts, right? v.contacts. And then that should be it. So we're repeating the list. We would be now rendering a list. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go to the documentation, which we will provide you with, or actually, no, we don't have sample data. Oh no, we do have sample data in the documentation. So let me get that sample data real quick. Let me just hard code this in the Wized contacts variable, just for the sake of convenience. Fantastic. Okay, so now we should see there should be this list item in here. So we'll go back to the element section, and we're going to see if this list is being rendered. So we're now rendering this, repeating this list based on v.contacts. So now the contact name, we would need to set text plain, and we would do and that, I forgot how to do that in Wized. Do you believe that? Unbelievable. Wow. Okay, how did we do this again? I think it was v.contacts, and then you need to get the specific one, and I will do v. The iterator variable, right? v.I. Was it like that? Yes, somewhat. And then I gotta do dot name because I want to get the name. And now I'm getting the name. You see, I'm back in the game. Look at that. I still got it. And then we're going to go to this set text on the phone number, and I'm going to go on plain text, and I'm going to go on return. I will do v.contacts, and I will do an array. I will put my index variable v.I inside of there. Dot, I think it was numbers, right? Dot, no, it was number. Yeah, and now as you can see, we're rendering that list. Fantastic. So we can actually go on the sample and delete this in here, because now we're actually rendering a real list. So we can now publish this. Look how cool that is. Okay. And actually what we want to do, we want to go back to this variable and delete this input and make it an empty array again. Fantastic. And now we're going to publish this whole thing. We're going to go on Webflow, and I'm going to remove the sample text here. I'm just keeping the list, and I'm just going to style the list, right? So let's just do like 1 rem. Fantastic. And I'm going to add a little bit of a background here. That's a little bit grayish. It's not going to win a design award, but it just illustrates that we're actually rendering a list and not just showing text. So let's publish this on Webflow. Let's go on Wized, make sure that is published as well, so everything is running smooth. Fantastic. Let's close that. Let's go back on our phone, and let's try closing the application. That is a real native mobile application running on our phone. Let's go back to TestFlight, open that again. It'll work the same with Android. So let's read the contacts. And now as you can see, we're repeating a list with the native contact information that are on our phone. How cool is that? And you can now build native mobile applications using the power of Wized that have the power of the native ecosystem by accessing native device functionality functionalities with just a little bit of JavaScript that you can run in Wized. So Webflow used to be only for landing pages. Wized came in, revolutionized everything, and extended that to being web applications. But now, thanks to Despia, we're not just limited anymore on the web. We can go to the App Store, we can go to the Android Store, and we can do all the things that real native mobile applications can do from the convenience of the Webflow editor without having to leave the Webflow ecosystem to build stunning native mobile applications. So if you want to learn more about that, go to Despia.com, or if you want to learn more about our documentation, go to docs.despia.com, and you will be able to learn how to build native mobile applications using Webflow and Wized with real native features, from widgets to app clips to reading native contact information to in-app purchases to everything you could ever imagine. And the distribution is super simple, super seamless to the App Store. It's one-click publishing to the App Store, one-click publishing to the Play Store, and the Despia framework, which compiles down to over 2,000 native files, is fully compliant with all the guidelines that Apple and Google has when it comes to frameworks. So you don't have to worry about being rejected by the App Store unless you're building an application that violates their terms by charging payments outside and all those kinds of things. Despia as a framework itself is fully compliant for both platforms. So I can't wait to see all the exciting mobile applications that you're going to build with Wized and the power of Despia. And yeah, I can't wait to see in the next video where we will talk about more amazing native functionalities and how to implement them inside of your Wized application. So make sure to subscribe and watch all the videos coming your way. Take care. Bye.